Hi and welcome to lecture number 30. The topic is the rise of political parties in the era of Jefferson, and the theme is politics and power. One learning objective for today, that is, explain the causes and effects of policy debates in the early republic. The key concept picks up the election of 1800. In the early 1800s, national political parties continued to debate issues such as the tariff, powers of the federal government, and relations with European powers. The election of 1800 was won by Thomas Jefferson. It was the first peaceful transfer of power between political parties. It was already a momentous precedent when Washington decided to step down in 1796 after serving 2 terms. And now the U.S. is setting a new tradition of peaceful transfers of power when the Democratic-Republican candidate beat the sitting Federalist president. The election also marks a period when Democratic Republicans dominate the presidency for the next 28 years. Through this period, the Federalist Party are going to have some support in Congress and they're going to have the Supreme Court's Chief Justice, but they will eventually die out between the 1810s and 1820s. The Democratic Republicans still dislike the Bank of the United States that was created by Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton was a Federalist who wanted a stronger federal government, and the bank was a symbol of the growth of power of government. For that reason, the Democratic Republicans allow the bank's charter to expire without renewal in 1811, so the first bank of the U.S. goes away. The Federalists favored a higher tariff to protect domestic industries. Early manufacturing efforts in the early 1800s were limited to the northern states, thus they supported the Federalists in those regions. Tariffs made life more expensive as it made the price of imports higher. Thus, southern states that relied on foreign finished goods were only hurt by it. Southern states then began to align closer with Democratic Republicans. Federalists also favored a stronger economic relationship with Britain. Jay's Treaty was meant to re-establish that trading relationship between the two countries in 1794. But when the Democratic Republicans come into power in the year 1800, the relationship with Great Britain begins to deteriorate. In 1807, Jefferson declares an embargo against Britain for their harassment of American ships trading with France. In Madison's presidency, the U.S. goes to war against Great Britain because tensions had escalated to a boiling point. The pictures on the right show different moments in the war, from naval battles to land battles, the White House being burnt down by the British, and Andrew Jackson rising to prominence through his victory at the Battle of New Orleans. In this period, the Supreme Court rises to its current status as a co-equal branch in the federal government. The key concept says the Supreme Court's decisions establish the primacy of the judiciary in determining the meaning of the Constitution and asserted that federal laws took precedence over state laws. John Marshall became the most important Chief Justice through his 34 years on the bench. He's not the first Chief Justice, that was John Jay, but the most important because of the power he brought to the court. Marshall is appointed by John Adams as one of his midnight appointments. Before John Adams left the White House, he filled dozens of federal positions and court seats that would serve their term through the Democratic-Republican administrations of the 1800s. The handwritten note from Adams dated January of 1801 is the actual nomination that he sent to Congress. John Marshall elevates the court to a co-equal branch status through the decision of Marbury v. Madison. As a consequence of the written opinion in this case, he declares that the Supreme Court can rule on the constitutionality of the actions of the other two branches, establishing the power of judicial review. Judicial review is the power of the courts to declare an action or law of another branch of government as constitutional or unconstitutional. This wasn't a complete power grab by Marshall or a violation of the intention of the framers of the Constitution. In fact, it was always the intention of the framers for the Supreme Court to have this power as it was described in Federalist 78. The essay by Alexander Hamilton envisioned the Supreme Court having an arbiter role in the government. The Marshall Court will interpret the Constitution and through his rulings expand the powers of the federal government for the next 34 years. In the ruling of McCulloch v. Maryland, he protects the congressional action of creating a Bank of the United States through the necessary and proper clause of the Constitution. In 1821, he protects the federal government's power to regulate interstate commerce through the court case of Givens v. Ogden. He will even come down on the side of Native Americans in Worcester v. Georgia in the time where the Cherokee are facing removal. He will outlast the rest of his party and by virtue of his position will be the last and most influential Federalist. The next key concept is about the Louisiana Purchase during the Jefferson administration. It says, following the Louisiana Purchase, the U.S. government sought influence and control over North America through a variety of means, including exploration and diplomatic efforts. In 1803, Jefferson sent diplomats to France to negotiate the purchase of the city of New Orleans and some surrounding territory. He wanted to have a greater amount of control over the trade that happened on the Mississippi River since the United States was so dependent on that port for exporting goods from the Ohio River Valley. There had been episodes in the past where New Orleans had been controlled by a foreign power and limited access of the United States to the port of New Orleans. In order to bring about economic stability, Jefferson wanted to purchase the port that was so important for American commerce. When his diplomats made the offer to Napoleon, Napoleon countered back and said he would sell the entirety of the Louisiana Territory for $15 million, only $5 million more than what the U.S. was offering for New Orleans and the surrounding territory. This was a great deal, and they took it immediately without conferring with Jefferson to see if it was okay. By virtue of purchasing the territory through this treaty power, Jefferson expanded the power of the presidency, which was uncharacteristic for a Democratic Republican like he was. Louisiana doubled the size of the country. It gave control of the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans to the United States, and now that all of this territory was to be explored and surveyed. The Lewis and Clark expedition was organized and sent by Jefferson to map out and bring back information on the different flora, fauna, and people that lived in the Louisiana Territory. They set off from St. Louis, and as you can see on the map, they take this northwestern route that follows the Missouri River through South Dakota and North Dakota, in hope that it would lead them to the Pacific Ocean. When they reach the Rocky Mountains, they have to search for a mountain pass and continue following the Snake and Columbia River to the Pacific Ocean. In North Dakota, they meet Sacagawea, a Lemhi Shoshone woman who acted as their interpreter and was instrumental in the success of the exploration. As far as the diplomatic efforts to influence and control North America, the United States was still engaging in treaties with Native Americans. In the Old Northwest, what is now the state of Indiana, the Treaty of Fort Wayne is negotiated by future President William Henry Harrison. It was opposed by the Shawnee, who were left out of the negotiations, and led to the Shawnee chief Tecumseh to take up arms against the United States. The fighting continued until 1813 when the U.S. gets a decisive victory at the Battle of Tippecanoe. In the southeast, the United States continues to negotiate with the Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Cherokee. Various treaties restrict their original landholdings through the early 19th century. However, they will be more directly impacted by what is later known as the Indian Removal Act. Alright, so that is it. Here is your recap. The election of 1800 begins electoral dominance of the Democratic Republicans. The two political parties are split by tariffs, the role of the central government, and foreign policy. John Marshall elevates the court to a co-equal branch, and the Louisiana Territory extends the country's boundaries and it brings stability along the Mississippi. Finally, the Lewis and Clark expedition brings new knowledge of what lay beyond the Mississippi. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, you can click on the video link on the screen. And if you are looking for more practice to help you on the AP exam, you can visit APUSHslides.com. I wish you the very best in all of your studying and look forward to seeing you back on the next lecture.